Welcome to the Paddle and Fin podcast, the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment, where we try to improve our skills as an angler by learning new techniques or improving the ones we already know. I'm your host, Ryan Milford. Welcome back to Paddle and Fin. This is Bass Fishing for Noobs. I'm your host, Ryan. And today we are doing another host interview. We got the one and only Mr. Sam Jones on here. Welcome to my segment here, buddy.
Thanks, man. I'm excited. I'm doing like a tour of all the segments. I've been stuck for so long over there on the reel down, and now I'm getting to venture out. It's pretty cool.
Well, we had a group meeting, and we were like, we need to give Sam a chance to, try some of this other stuff. He's getting overshadowed by Dan over there on Reel Down, and so
Goodness, is that how it went?
But yeah, I'm really interested in this interview here because Sam's a little different than a lot of us bass fishermen. A lot of us bass fishermen like to, when we can, we like to stay shallow. But Sam, it seems like he likes to head out deep. And that's a problem. That's an area problem where I have a lot of issues, and I believe a lot of other anglers have some issues with that, like finding the fish out deep. So this should be pretty interesting. But Sam,
Try.
you spend your podcast career, interviewing other anglers and highlighting their fishing and their tournament victories and everything. I feel like you kind of get overlooked because you're a pretty good fisherman yourself. I know you've won some tournaments this year, or at least one I know of. You've won this year. You might have done some more. I'm not 100%.
Yeah, I got one big one, which was the Kayak championship here in Indiana, our club championship. And then I had another club win and some online stuff this year. So,
and you did pretty good in the KBF Angler of the Year. You beat Brian Schiller. Brian the Killer.
I did all right for my rookie year. Definitely, I had goals of finishing a little bit higher, but I was, I took last year was all about just getting my feet wet in the kayak tournament stuff and just kind of filling it out. And I think I accomplished most of my goals last year.
All right, well, let's get started with you. I know you got a big background with fishing, so just for anybody that hasn't really paid it, I know you've talked about it a little bit here on the podcast, but just for people that haven't really paid attention, maybe, or people that are brand new to the podcast, where'd you start with bass fishing?
So I think like most people, my story is similar in the fact that I've always fished. My earliest memories are with a rod and reel in my hand and fishing, and Boy Scout fishing derbies and all those kinds of fun things that we do growing up. I didn't actually get into bass fishing until I was about 14, though. I mean, I'd caught them, but I didn't go out with the purpose of, finding and catching bass and using artificial lures and that sort of stuff until I was 14. That all got started in a creek near my house. I'd seen some fish in the creek riding my bike by one day, and it's a longer story, but I'll keep it short and sweet. I grew up by this creek my whole life, and my parents told me there wasn't any fish in there, and I believed them. And maybe they didn't think there was, or maybe they were just trying to keep me out of the creek when I was younger, because it fluctuated water level a lot, so it is kind of a dangerous creek. But so they shut down the road that we lived on, and me and my cousin were riding our bikes up and down the state highway that was shut down at that time for construction, and we stopped on the bridge and we're doing what normal teenage boys do at that time, and we were looking around and we saw fish swimming underneath. They were big carp, and we ran back to the house and grabbed our fishing poles and caught some fish that day, maybe one or two. And then that night I wanted to go get some bait for the next day, so I went to Walmart with my mom, and I was in the fishing aisle and I saw some crankbaits, and I grabbed a crankbait, begged her and pleaded her to get it, and got that crankbait and went fishing the next day in that creek with it, and just caught bass after bass after bass on this little Norman coffin lip crankbait. I still have it. And then
That's impressive.
Bought like a half a dozen of those things, and that's where I got started. That's where I was hooked. Literally from that moment on, I obsessed over it. Every morning, if I wasn't fishing, I was watching fishing shows and reading Bassmaster magazines and FLW magazines. So, been a member of both of those since I was like 14. And then when I was 16, I started hanging out with some different guys and getting into tournament fishing. So I've fished from everything from a float tube to a canoe, sit inside kayaks, bass boats, $50,000 bass boats, and bass boats that I fixed up at home, John boats that we built and everything. So I've fished in it all pretty much. So yeah, that's kind of where it all started though.
Sweet. So, all right, like I was talking about earlier, I was talking about that deep water fishing. I know you like to go for those deep bass. So, okay, if you go into a brand new body of water, like what's your first move? Like, what's the first thing you're doing to break that water down?
Brand new body of water. How much time do I have?
How much time do you usually have? Like, say you're going to a tournament on a body of water you never fished on. How long do you usually give yourself to pre-fish?
I like 3 days.
That's a lot of time.
Max.
That is a lot of time.
No, it's a lot of time if it's a club tournament, but when you're talking about fishing at that higher level, right? And you're fishing for AOIs and you're fishing for paychecks and trying to qualify for championships and stuff like that, more of those elite quote unquote events, I think it's the perfect amount of time. There are guys that fish more.
I think my comment on it being a lot of times going off of, I get like 5 days of vacation time, so I try to put myself, if I'm gonna fish KBF events, that I think we got like 4 or 5 events in our region this coming year. So if I only got 5 days, how am I going to spread that out? It'd be like 1 day a piece. I get like 1 day of pre-fishing if I were to do that. So that's my thinking behind it. You might get more vacation time than me.
Well, I work for myself now.
Well, now.
But previously I did have a lot of vacation time that I had racked up, and so I was able to do that. But so I'll answer it 2 different ways, okay? So I'll answer it how I do it, and then I'll answer it how I'd do it if I was in your situation, right? Because I think your situation is probably more of the average kayak angler, right?
Right.
That's their situation. They get 4 weeks of vacation max, maybe 2 weeks for most guys, and then even less for some. So if I'm you and I've got maybe 1 day of practice, right? I've picked, these are the 5 tournaments I'm going to fish. They're 5 new bodies of water, and I got 1 day to fish. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a ton of study on YouTube. I'm going to watch every stinking YouTube video I can find, and not just bass fishing. If there's a catfish, a crappie, a striper, whatever kind of fishing it is, I'm going to watch every single YouTube video, whether it's 2 minutes long or an hour long, on that body of water. And I'm going to be looking for landmarks. I'm going to be looking at water clarity. I'm going to be looking at seasonal patterns that they're fishing. I'm going to be looking about what lures they're using and how they're using them. I'm going to be looking at what the structure on the bank looks like, the rock. I'm going to be listening to the things that they're talking about. If I can see their graph in that video, I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to their graph. So that would be the first thing, right? I would do a ton of study on that. Then I would go to maps. Some people might do that the opposite way around, but I'm going to go to maps second after that, so that I've got a visual idea of what that lake looks like. And now I'm going to take it to the map, and it's going to help me better read that map for that lake.
Let me stop you just real quick and
Yep.
ask a question on that. When you say maps, I've heard a lot of people talk about maps, especially you and Brian when y'all were fishing KBF and stuff. Are y'all talking about like an actual physical map? Or y'all talking about like Navionics on your phone or
Both.
what? Oh, okay.
Both. Because every map you get is going to show you something different. So Navionics is great because it's so user friendly, it's easy, it's accessible, it's free. It's a great place to start. Historical maps are better yet because
Really?
you can because the historical maps, especially if you can find topo maps and stuff like that before the lake was even formed.
Ooh.
Now you really are starting to understand what that looks like, what that structure is about, what houses were there, where were the roads, where were the valleys, the ditches. They're hard to find, but you can find them on some lakes.
That's really going in depth right there, but it makes sense because Percy Priest Lake here in Middle Tennessee, they say there's still houses underneath there.
Yep.
Where they just flooded them.
Yep, there are. They're foundations mostly now, right?
I guess I don't know.
They're mostly foundations now, but there's still structures out there. So that's one part of it, right? And then pulling up your graph, if you've got a Humminbird or a Garmin or a Lowrance. Now Lowrance uses Navionics as the stock, but they have what's called CMAP now that has come out, which is way more comparable to some of the higher end mapping that you see on Lake Master and what Garmin's using. So you're going to use that, right? You're going to pull up your graph and you're going to mark stuff there. You're going to look at those maps, any map you can get your hand on, and then Google Earth. Google Earth is great because you can see current, you can see past and historical satellite imagery. So you can look when that water's up and when that water's down. So, and if it's a lake that fluctuates a lot, like in the winter pool, it's really shallow or it's, really low, all that, if you know right now that you're going to, say, Kentucky Lake in the summer, and right now that lake is pulled way down for winter pool, right now's the time to look at it on satellite imagery. Because all of those things that are visible on the surface are going to be under the water when you go in the summer.
See, that's something I've actually, even the areas that I fish quite a bit, that's something that I've been trying to take advantage of is like when I go to like Stones River, for example, that runs into Percy Priest Lake. That's where I like to fish a lot. And right now it's low. And so, I'm trying to make like a mental map of where all this structure is that's exposed right now while the water's low. That way, when it warms back up and I get back out there, I know about where that stuff is. So
absolutely, and that's something as a kayak angler is a huge advantage to us. Is when the ramps are silted up and they can't launch those bass boats, we can drag a kayak out there and get on the water. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you could go around and you can mark that stuff on your units, or if you've got like an app like the Angler app and the Bullseye, you can sit there and mark waypoints with that Bullseye, or go in and manually do it with the free app or any other program you want to use, or a notebook. You know what I'm saying? Or like get on your phone, pull up Google Maps and start dropping points on Google Maps. Because that's going to be there forever, right? You just log into your Google account on any device and boom, there's all those points. So
I think that is one thing where I'm messing up, is I'm trying to make like all mental notes of where this stuff is instead of actually, marking it on something.
Yeah.
That is probably
I
something
know guys can do that. I know guys that could do that. They can tell you that 10 years ago in Bears Cove on so-and-so lake in 12 foot of water, 30 foot into the cove is a stump that's 2 foot off the bottom. I can't do that. No way. I have to have it digitally or manually written somewhere. And my brain just doesn't. I'm lucky to remember, what I did five. I'm not kidding you. My desk is like notepads and my phone is full of notes. I got them everywhere. I can't remember things like that. So I use different tools. But so to move this along, that's where I would start, right? I would do all the studying I can leading up to that. You got a tournament 2 months from now, start studying now. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the area of the lake. So I'm going to eliminate water first. Usually people are looking for water to fish. I'm eliminating water first. I'm going to eliminate as much of that lake as I can. And then I'm going to look for areas that have stuff that I'm comfortable with, right? So, I'm going to look for the parts of the lakes that have the most of the things that I'm comfortable fishing with, or I feel like those fish are going to be, where those fish are going to be. And I'm going to break down that one small section of the lake. And if I find a pattern that looks like that, I'm going to try and find through mapping. I'm going to try, or from memory, from watching those YouTube videos, I'm going to try and find other areas that I can ramp hop and hit that have similar types of structure. Okay. So that's what I'm doing if I have one day of practice. I'm going to do all that study up front, and then I'm going to go to the water. I'm going to take a look at a few different ramps. I'm going to launch in an area that I feel has the most potential. It's got creek channels and ditches and rock and wood and all those things in one area. Somewhere in there's going to be a fish, and I'm going to try and put a pattern together in there. And then I'm going to ramp hop and try and find other places that are similar to it, pick the best one, and then tournament fish. That's if I have one day of practice. Now, if I have what I prefer, 3 or 4 days, anything more than that I think is too much. I think it's way too much. But 3 days I think is the perfect. So what I'm going to do, I'm still going to do all that map study. I'm still going to do all that eliminating water, just like I talked about in your scenario. But on day one, for me, I'm going to check a bunch of ramps if I can. I'm going to drive around and check a bunch of ramps. Or if I feel like I've got it dialed in pretty well through my study, I'm going to get on the water first thing in the morning in my first area. And I'm going to start covering water. I want to see what it looks like. I'm not going to put the bait in the water very much. Maybe to check something that I see on the graph. Maybe to check the bottom contours or something like that with a heavy jig or something like that to feel what's down there, what's really down there, and get an idea of how it feels compared to what I'm seeing on my graph. I might run a moving bait or something like that and just test the waters a little bit, but I'm really not going to have a bait in the water much. I'm going to be either, if you're pedaling or paddling or you have a motor, same thing, covering as much water as I possibly can to see that lake. Because when I do start fishing and I do start putting a pattern together, I want to know that I can run over to different parts of that body of water to find, if I'm catching fish on the end of a laydown in 15 foot of water, right? Catch one, I catch two, I catch three. Now I've got a pattern. So I want to know how many other laydowns are like that within the lake. You know what I'm saying? So that's day one, right? That's what I'm doing day one. I'm just covering water and trying to understand what it looks like, trying to put a couple bites together. Day two, I'm trying to formulate plan A, B, and C. I'm trying to figure out what the different patterns are and trying to understand where those fish are setting up. And I'm also trying to understand where those fish might go if conditions change. If I've got a front coming in, if I got rain coming in, cloud cover one day, sun the next day, right? I don't expect those fish to travel miles and miles down the lake. I expect them to stay somewhere in that area. So I'm trying to understand where they might go if conditions change. because I still got to catch them. If I'm catching them on a buzzbait in practice and they don't bite a buzzbait in that first hour or two during the tournament, I got to change it up. So you got to have plan A, B, and C, right? So that's kind of what I'm doing. And then I'm looking for new areas, right? On day 3, I've formulated my plan on day 2, what I plan to do on my tournament. At the end of the day, I've gone back to the campsite or the hotel room. I formulated my plan in my head. On day 3, I'm going to go back to my primary area and check it, make sure those fish are still there, set up the same way. Might throw a bait in there once or twice, hook 1 or 2 or shake 1 or 2 off. Okay? And then I'm going to go, I'm leaving it. I'm gone. I'm going to go find more water. I'm going to cover more water, look for those backup plans if something goes wrong. You know what I'm saying? And then I'm going to get off the water fairly early. I'm going to try and get off the water by midday, 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, get my batteries charged up, start prepping, retying, respooling, setting my tackle up in the manner in which I want it for the tournament, making sure everything's clean and tidy. Then I'm going to go check in. I'm going to have a good meal, get some rest, do a little more map study, and then go to work on tournament day. That's kind of my regiment. So,
all right. So when it comes to, the deeper bass, I think it's pretty safe to say you got to have pretty good electronics to really dial that in, right?
Yeah, electronics are definitely key. I'm not going to sit here and tell you can't fish deep without good electronics or without electronics at all. You can. It's definitely easier the better your electronics are. And I don't have like $2,000 electronics. Let me put it out there. I'm running off in my kayak. I'm running off of a Hook 2, 7-inch. It's not a $1,000 plus model. It's a really solid model for what it is in the price range that it is. But you can still fish deep with a $90 unit from Walmart, or without a unit at all. I learned how to fish deep without ever having a sonar.
That's interesting. I want to get into that. But first, you were talking about those high dollar units. I was at Bass Pro Shop yesterday with my dad, and they had some units on display, and for like, small price of like $3,500, you can get one the size of basically my TV in my living room.
Yeah,
like this thing is huge. I mean, it's exaggeration.
And think
it's really big, but it's huge.
And think the bass boat guys run 3 at the console and 3 up front of that size.
Like I was just thinking, one that size, like imagine it on a kayak. Like that would be ridiculous.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna put a 9 or a 10-inch screen on my kayak this year.
You gotta go big, huh?
You gotta. My buddy Alan, we did a seminar today, and he said it best. You gotta get the best thing you can in your budget. If your budget's $90, get the best unit you can for $90, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you got to get the best unit you can in your budget. And that Hook 2 has been a great unit for me, but there are things that it's missing that I would like to have, and I know that would help me dial it in even further on the water in the tournament. And if I got to spend $2,000 on a unit, but it helps me cash checks, I'll do it. Got to spend money to make money.
Yeah, I mean, from y'all's point of view, like you were talking about Alan Reed. I assume you mean Alan Reed.
Yeah. Yep. Alan Reed, my travel partner.
But from y'all's perspective, y'all hit a lot of tournaments and events. Yeah, I could see spending big money on a unit like that because you can make your money back cashing checks, based on that. But I've also got one of the Lowrance Hook 2s, but I got like the smaller version. It's like a 4-inch. It's like $120, $130 at Walmart. So yours is probably a lot better than mine, but I'm still trying to figure this one out.
But hey, that still gives you some of the key things, right? That still gives you an idea of how hard that bottom is. It gives you an idea if there's structure there, and it gives you an idea of, water temperature and obviously depth. And if it's set up, even a cheap one will give you an idea where the thermocline is. So that gives you some of those key aspects you need to know, right? So it's not a bad place to start at all.
Yeah, I mean, this is I guess you can say my first real fish finder. I had a little portable, like $40 thing I was using that pretty much was only good for water depth, which does help. If you know how deep the water is, that does help. It helps you find little pockets, like deep pockets in the water and stuff. But this is my first one that I kind of trust to tell me, like, if I see a fish on there, like, there's a good chance there's actually a fish down there.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. If you're seeing a blip, something's there. You know what I mean? Something's there. It's either a bass or a catfish or a crappie or something. So,
all right. So with the deep water, do you fish deeper pretty much year round?
So let me clarify one thing.
Okay.
I do fish deep when I can, but I'm not necessarily just a deep water fisherman. I'm an offshore. So I may be fishing 2 foot of water out in the middle of the lake on a flat.
Okay.
Or I might be fishing 30 foot of water. But I just tend to stay away from the bank. So depending on the lake, that could be very deep water, or that could be just offshore structure. So I just want to make sure that people understand that when they're listening or watching, like, everything I'm talking about just isn't about fishing in 30 foot of water or 20 foot of water. In fact, largemouth, often you won't find them that deep. Now, they will get that deep, but often they're not that deep.
Well, Sam, I appreciate you coming on my segment and making me feel stupid for assuming you were fishing deep when you were fishing offshore.
That's okay. No. That is a common misperception when people talk about fishing offshore, fishing, off the bank. People immediately assume that you're fishing really deep. Not always the case. Some lakes don't get deeper than 12, 15 foot. Is that for an average depth? You know what I'm saying? But I do fish deep a lot, so we can talk about that. This is one part. So,
well, that makes me feel a little bit better about myself right now.
Yeah, it's just one part of it. So,
well, when you are fishing deep, how do you usually, go about that? I'm sure you look into a lot of what the bass actually feed on in that particular lake.
Yeah.
But I feel like you have to use more like heavy lures to get it down there in 20 or 25, 30 foot waters. As an example.
Sometimes it is a finesse thing, though. It really is. Look, here's the thing. As we go to talk about this, I'm sure there will be 15, 20 guys that'll listen to it, and they will completely agree with me. They'll be like, yep, that's what it is. There'll be 15, 20 guys that'll have been like, I've never heard anyone talk about that. There'll be 15, 20 guys that'll probably 100% disagree with what I'm saying, right? It's all based off of experience. But
well, that is a big thing with fishing, is a lot of it is preference and, like you said, experience. Some people tend to cling to jigs more. Some people tend to cling to, crankbaits more, So I understand what you're saying right there.
Yeah. And I fish anything that you fish up shallow, I'm going to fish out offshore. I'm going to fish it deep. Whether it be a shaky head, a jig, a crankbait, like you said, topwater, a spinnerbait, anything that you would fish up shallow, I'm going to fish deep too.
So right? you fish topwater, shallow, or I mean, in deep water?
Heck yeah. So Lake Ouachita for the FLW KBF Cup this past summer. I was fishing in 25 to 40 foot of water with topwater and spy baits and swim baits. 25 to 30, 40 foot of water.
I'm guessing you had a lot of water clarity.
Absolutely. Yeah, very clear water. Bait fish, that's where the bait fish was. You know, that's where the shad were at, balled up, running around, schooled up, busting out there in that depth range. But I wasn't the thing is I was fishing on top when I was searching, but when I had the area where I felt like the fish were, I wasn't fishing on top, even though those fish were busting on top and the bass were busting on top. I was fishing underneath the school. So if the bass were busting up, say in 20 foot of water, 30 foot of water, the bass were busting up top, I was probably 15 foot down in the water column when I was getting bit. And that's where I was running my lures. So that's the area I was targeting in some cases.
So were you trying to like present more of like a dying bait fish? Like
Yeah.
kind of like is it the Nico rig or is it the Nico rig or Demiki rig where it's like a dying shad kind of floating down?
The Demiki.
Demiki rig, that's
Yeah, it's just like a little ball head. So here's what was going on at Ouachita. One of two things. You had big schools that were running out in that deeper water, right? And you got a lot of little fish that were up there busting on them. But sitting underneath there were the larger fish. Now, where the really good bite, it was tougher, where the really good bite was actually really shallow. They were running the bait up really shallow, and there was a lot of bigger fish in there. Dusty Yacker did an amazing job. We were fishing in the same area, and he figured the speed and the cadence out a little better than I did and was able to really jack them. But when that bite would die off really shallow, I'd run out and chase them out in the middle and stuff and pull out a little bit deeper, but the quality was a little less. So then I started dropping down lower and the quality started coming up a little bit again. So I think oftentimes those bigger fish just kind of sit out underneath, let all those little fish do the work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I've heard other people say that on my segment, talking to me, kind of let the smaller fish, wear them out or even like, they might even kill them, but not actually get them in their mouth or something. They start dying and floating down, and then they just gobble them up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. So, yeah. But again, that's just one small example there. So.
Well, what's some of your favorite techniques to use in bass fishing? Whether you are fishing shallow or deep, just some of your favorite ones, some that you've had the most success with, some that are just fun to do, or you being, a serious bass fisherman, you probably don't do it just for the fun. You probably do whatever it takes to get that bass on the end of the line. But you know where I'm going with this.
I do. Yeah. So just fun fishing. I want to go out and have a good time. I'm going to throw a frog. I love throwing a frog. I don't throw it the same way a lot of people do. But that's one of my favorite ways to fish. I don't often throw a frog in a tournament situation though.
Reason behind that?
Because I think for me, it is the hookup ratio and landing ratio goes way down and it's not super efficient. So in a tournament scenario, I'm looking to be as efficient as possible, and I don't like messy fishing. So don't get me wrong, I've won tournaments on frogs, but that's rare that I will fish a frog in a tournament.
See, that's where you need to get some of those frogs that Mr. Dan Perry got me in our Secret Santa. Because did you listen to our episode we did with that? I know you kind of missed out on that. But hang on.
Yeah.
These things are pretty sweet wherever they are. Here they are. They have Velcro on them. Now I got to change out boxes. I forget what brand they were. You'll have to ask Dan. These here, they got Velcro on the back of them. He said they're supposed to help make the lips stick to increase the ratio. So that might be something to try, so you can start using those in the tournament.
There was, I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Mans. I'm not sure. There was a company that used to mold Velcro into their ribbon tail worms.
Really?
Yeah. So for what you just said, but also too, it just gave them a little extra texture that supposedly helped them hold on. So we could do a whole show on frog fishing, so I won't go too in depth here. But one of the main reason is, even if you have a great frog, fish miss a lot on that frog in those heavy mats. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can see that.
Open water frog fishing, whole nother topic. Again, we could do a whole show on just that. But I just don't find it to be super efficient. So I avoid it a lot of times. But I'll tell you one thing that I do. So BizBaits has a frog called the Pad Daddy. It's a great frog. It's got nice ribs on it, and then it's got an open hook slot in it so that it stays from getting hung up and stuff, but the hook, you can keep it exposed. So your hookup ratio does go up. But a lot of times what I do, I don't fish hollow body frogs a whole lot. I fish paddle tail frogs. Even on nasty slop, I fish paddle tail, or, paddle frogs, not paddle tail, but paddle frogs, buzz frogs, right? Those soft plastic frogs. I fish those a lot more than I do a hollow body. And I burn them. And then when I get a blow up, if they don't get it, they make a hole and I know where they're at now. They usually don't go very far. And so I'll flip in there with a heavy tungsten weight and whatever bait I prefer that day. I'll flip that in there into that hole, and I'll usually pick it up that way. Or then I'll have a hollow body rigged up too, and I'll toss that hollow body 10, 15 yards past that hole. I'll work it up to that hole, and I'll just kill it right in the hole. And they'll come up, and now they've got a clean spot to hit that. That's a lot of times how I frog fish. And I've had a lot of success doing it that way. So that's my fun bait, right? The frog. But a swim bait, shaky head, a jig, and a spinner bait. Those are my 4 go-tos. The fifth one I'd throw in there would be like a Project Z chatterbait or the jackhammer.
Man, I got a couple of those jackhammers. I can't wait to use them.
Yeah,
so,
they catch fish.
I'm gonna intervene here one more time. I'm sorry I keep interrupting you.
It's fine. That's what it's about.
So at Bass Pro Shop yesterday, I found another Z-Man chatterbait that I've never even heard of. I've never seen them. I've never heard of them, but it's kind of like a swing jig type deal, but it's the same price range as the Project Z chatterbait, but it's like a chatterbait, and it's just a hook on a eye, and so it's got a lot of movement to it. Have you seen those?
Yeah, they got like an offset hook on them, right?
Yeah, that kind of deal.
Yeah, I've seen them. It's like you said, it's like a swivel head, and that's basically how I would fish it. I would fish that on. I'd keep constant bottom contact with that thing, and I'd keep that thing moving. But
I'll just double check. It is offset hook.
I can't say that I've seen them. Yes, I've not fished one. And I can't tell you any experience I know of anyone else fishing them. But I would fish that similar to I would fish a typical swivel football head style jig.
Yeah, I was thinking, I got some diesel minnows with it, and I was thinking put one of those on there and, Just kind of fish it, somewhat slow, but still, you know, still give it that action to where it can flutter when I. But sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's good stuff, man. I would also say too, I would imagine that with the right trailer, that would give off a really wide wobble. So
Yeah,
anytime you're in a situation in which that is beneficial, that's when I would maybe try throwing that. But honestly, man, the Project Z and the Jackhammer, it's hard to put those down.
yeah, man. One of the biggest things with chatterbaits right now is the waters that I've been fishing when I've been able to get out. They've been so dirty and muddy and not much visibility to them. I feel like that vibration and that water displacement is probably a key factor right now to drawing those fish to you. Them
Yeah.
feeling. But I haven't had any luck since you know I think the last fish I caught was in like early November, and I've went out 2 or 3 times with no luck. So my theory may be completely wrong.
Well, I don't think you're completely wrong. I think you're really close to keying in on what it is. So you said it's really muddy. So that can be different for everyone. So when you talk about clarity, let's talk about in how many feet or inches.
Maybe a feet, or maybe
A
a feet,
foot,
maybe a foot of
maybe a
visibility.
foot visibility. So it's not chocolate milk, right? What's your water temperatures?
Uh, Actually, it was higher the last time I went out. It was about 54 degrees. It's been around like 50, 51, but it actually got up to like 54 the last time I went out. Next time I go out, it's probably going to be lower. We're got a cold front coming through. It's going to be like a high of 30s air temp the next couple days, and it ain't supposed to really
Well,
up too much anytime soon. So,
yeah, and when you're talking about river or creeks or streams and stuff like that, when you've got a lot of water rushing in, rainwater, that's cooling it down too. So when you got rainwater rushing in, that's just causing it to muddy up. That's cooling down your water system as well. Then it kind of stables out, and that temperature will come up a little bit, and then you get a little more rain come in, and then it drops. So air temperature is not the only thing that's affecting that.
and we have had
Um,
a lot of rain lately too.
Yeah, so that's cooling down your water system too. So what I would say this time of year, I would when we're talking about throwing a jackhammer, I would be throwing an all black jackhammer, black blade, black and blue skirt, black trailer, and I would throw that as tight to cover or in the cover as possible, and I would be reeling it as slow as possible to get the vibration, or I may not even be reeling it steadily. I may be actually dragging it. But I'm going when you're talking muddy water though, cold muddy water, I mean it's got to be on the cover or in the cover. You know what I'm saying? It's got to be on that limb, not off to the right a foot or out in front of it. I mean, I'm talking throw it on it at the very back of it, let it slide off onto the side, and then roll it down. If it's a brush pile, I want to. You got to. Here's the thing: people want to avoid the stuff with a jackhammer because it's $12 if you get it cheap, $18 if you pay full price for it. You want to try and avoid hanging that up. But if you're not willing to fish that where it's going to get hung up, you're not where the fish are.
Yeah, because the fish are in there.
Exactly. So now you've got an $18 lure that's not going to catch you, and it may catch you one or two here and there, but what's it worth if it's not catching any fish? So you got to
Exactly.
throw it where the fish are. So yeah, in that situation with the jackhammer, I'm going to fish it slow as I can fish it, and I'm gonna vary just a steady slow retrieve with a drag, and I'm gonna be in the cover on it.
I
So
I get that, and just to kind of you know push that a little further, I know a lot of experienced anglers are already going to know this, but for any brand new bass fishermen that might not know a whole lot about bass and whatnot, bass are an ambush predator. They like to hide behind wherever they can hide behind and wait for wait for their prey to come swimming
Mm-hmm.
along, and then just jump out and grab them up.
Yep.
So the nastier the cover is, the more likely there is a bass in there trying to hide and wait for something to come along. So, sometimes you got to get in there to those dirty spots.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You got it. You're dead on.
So, what do you have another like a another? What did we get to? You know, uh, top lure of yours inside tournaments? We talked about the frog for fun fishing.
Yeah, so I said my top 4 or 5. So
Oh
the
yeah,
number
you did
5 was
mention those
the
others.
the jackhammer. So my search bait, like my confidence bait, is and if you follow me on social media, you know what it is because I post about it all the time. Is a swim bait, and particularly a 4.5 to 5 inch swim bait on a bladed weighted hook, swim bait hook. The one I use is by Wicked Weights. It's called the Wicked Willow, and it's a tungsten belly weighted swim bait hook with a willow leaf blade on it. Now I do switch that blade out sometimes depending on conditions, but 80% of the time I'm fishing that willow blade on the back of it with a 4.5 to 5 inch swim bait. Pick your favorite: Strike King, Rage Tail, Bass Tricks. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Whatever you have confidence is, that's what I'm going to throw. That's my search bait. Unless I'm in conditions in which I feel like the spinner bait may excel. So, cloudy, windy days, I'll probably switch over to that spinner bait. But that's really kind of my search bait. Whereas another guy might throw a crankbait or something like that. That's my search bait.
But
Um, yep, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, is there a particular brand swim bait that you like to go with, or do you kind of mix it up, or is there different ones for different situations, or?
Yeah, so when we're talking about specifically, fishing that weighted swim bait hook with the willow blade, right? That underspin style. Um, Strike King Rage Swimmer is kind of a constant for me. And honestly, the reason why is they're easy to find. I can get them at
Oh yeah,
Walmart in a pinch.
you can
I
get
can
them
order.
anywhere.
Yeah, you can get them anywhere because really all of these swim baits are mimicking a Kayak. The Kayak was kind of the originator there, right? So all of these ribbed swim baits have a very similar profile, have a very similar kick. The Strike Kings seem to last a long time. I can catch a lot of fish on them, and really they're just really available. If I'm going through them or if I forget to order some, I can run in just about any Walmart across the nation and find the one I want and the color that I want, which is like that KVD Magic or whatever. It's pretty much the one I throw. Then you throw white too as well. And then there's some other custom swim baits that I throw from time to time if I want that water wobble or something a little tighter. If I want to fish really, really fast, a lot of times I'll throw like a skinny dipper on there. Reaction Innovation skinny dipper. So I don't know why. I think fishing fast that it does a little performs a little better. But yeah, my
All right,
go-to is the Strike King.
sweet. Well, I feel like we know. I feel like we know the real Sam Jones a little better after tonight.
Good,
Uh,
man. That's good.
all right, so I'm gonna hit you with a couple questions that I've pretty much done this from the start, but I kind of got out of it for a little bit. I'm trying to get back into it with it being season 3 now.
Mm,
So I'm gonna hit you with a couple questions that I try to ask all my guests at the end of the interview. Um, okay, brand new bass fishermen. You know, they're wanting to get into it. They got the interest in it, and so they're like, "All right, I'm gonna go pick up, a couple lures to get me started." So they want to pick up 3 lures, and they come to you like, "Hey, Mr. Sam Jones, are you a professional fisherman? Do you, do you, I'm gonna go to wherever, go to Walmart or Academy, or I want to pick up, 3 lures to get me started with bass fishing. What 3 lures would you suggest that brand new bass fisherman to pick up?
I'm probably first going to ask them what water they're fishing. Because if they're going to fish a pond, or if they're going to go out and fish on Kentucky Lake, or if they're going to fish a grassy, that's the first thing I'm going to ask. What water are you fishing?
Well, see, now you're putting me on the spot. I was trying to put you on the spot. Now you're putting me on the spot. This ain't fair. All right.
Well, I'm not going to tell a kid that's going to go out and fish a pond in Indiana that's full of grass to go buy a crankbait to cover water with. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's hard for me to just say these are 3 lures.
That's fair. But okay, they don't know. Okay. We'll put it this way to give you a little bit. They live near you. That's why they're asking you this. They live near you. They don't know what bodies of water to go to because they haven't actually went bass fishing yet.
Yeah.
So I mean, without actually suggesting what bodies of water for them to go to, just bodies of water around you, what would you say?
Yeah, sorry I made that difficult. I'm going to say a jig.
Yeah. Is there football jig, swim jig, flipping jig?
I'm going to say a good casting jig. That is something that you can fish around cover, grass, and swim. So I'm going to recommend the Wicked Weights tungsten casting jig that we have. It's called the Combat Jig. That's gonna be the one that I'm gonna recommend. But
I'm gonna recommend the JigMasters flipping jig. That's just
when you're talking about a lead jig, absolutely. Josh hooked me up with some of those this fall at the Turkey Bowl. And I played around with them, and I caught some big fish on them this fall, the football jig and the flipping jig. So, yes, if you're talking about a lead jig, I'm with you. The JigMaster is great. And that's the thing about you can make your own jig. One of the best lead jig heads I've ever used is I think it's just called the brush jig from Do It Molds. I used to make those when I was in high school. That's a great jig. It's a great jig. It skips well. It fishes through a lot of cover well. Is it the best jig out there? No, I don't think so, but it's a great jig. You want to make your own jigs. So I'm going to say a jig, right? You can fish that a lot of different ways, many different water depths, right? I'm going to tell you probably start with a 3/8 ounce. You can fish shallow, you can fish fairly deep. So I'm going to start with the jig. And then I'm going to tell you a spinnerbait. Because if you're getting started out, that spinnerbait is something that you can cover, again, multiple different water columns with. It's fairly easy, and it just catches fish. Okay. Always has, always will.
Going off that, well, Mr. Sam Jones, if you want me to get a spinnerbait, Walmart's got these that are $1 a piece. Will those work?
Anything will work. I've seen guys catch fish off of those lures where you pull the drawstring and the tail flaps. Anything will work. And again, you buy the best thing that's in your budget. If your budget is $1 spinnerbait from Walmart, get $1 spinnerbait from Walmart. 10-pounders have been caught on them.
I like that.
You know what I'm saying? Buy the best thing that's in your budget. If you can afford an $8 spinnerbait, get you an $8 spinnerbait. You know what I'm saying? Get you and then, whatever you got confidence in. Because here's the thing, if you have confidence in something, you're going to make more casts. You're going to keep that bait in the water longer, and you're going to focus more on how you're fishing it. And then you're way more likely to catch fish. So, yep.
I like that. That's some really good advice right there. I like that whole, whatever your budget allows you. All right, so that was number 2, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
We got one more.
It's gonna be a shaky head.
Shaky head.
It's got to be a shaky head.
I know you and Brian the Killer Schiller love those shaky heads.
Yeah, that's we talked about the swim bait and the chatterbait and the frog. That's one that we didn't really talk about. Again, we could do a whole show on that. I would love to do a whole show on that.
We can definitely do it sometime. I think we're
Yeah.
getting a little low on time with this one, though.
Well, oh yeah, and I don't even think we got into the deep water thing really.
No, we really didn't.
Yeah, so there's another episode. But yeah, the shaky head for sure. Again, that's something you can fish in all water columns. You can fish it in cover, around cover. You can even fish it around grass. And you can fish a lot of different soft plastic baits on it. So everybody knows it for, a shaky head worm, right? A finesse worm,
Right.
but there are plenty other baits you can fish on that.
Sweet. So one more question I'm gonna hit you with, and this could be harder or easier depending on whatever. But okay. So one piece of advice you would give to a brand new bass fisherman.
Don't get caught up on collar and having a ton of tackle.
I could see that, but coming from you, aren't you the man that's got like a crazy amount of tackle? Like
I have a crazy amount of tackle. Yes, yes, I do. That I
calling
have.
you out, Sam. Calling you out.
It's true. I carry more gear than a lot of guys, but I don't have 16 different types of crankbaits and 16 different types of jigs and 16 different colors of Cincos. I keep my collar. Now, it's not always been the case. I used to have a wall in my basement that had every kind of bait you can imagine and every color down from there. I mean, you would have been amazed by the amount of plastic that I had, and I've given a lot of it away over the last few years because I had to dial it down. I realized that I wasn't fishing with any of it. I went back and started thinking about what I was actually catching fish on and what I had confidence in, and realizing that it's just a big waste of time and it's a really big waste of money. So yeah, I would say just don't get caught up in all of that and find a couple, 2, 3, 4 lures that cover the different water columns that you have confidence in, and stay simple with color. That's what I would say to a brand new fisherman.
Most excellent, sir.
Thanks.
Mr. Jones, it's been a pleasure having you on Bass Fishing for Noobs segment. Like you said, there's a lot of stuff we could have covered that we didn't cover tonight. So, maybe in the future we can get you back on here. We can talk about some more of that stuff. For anybody that's new to the podcast, check out Sam on Fridays. He does the Reel Down segment over there with Dan Perry. They go over tournament recaps. They've been, here in kind of the off season, they've been talking to a lot of tournament directors. For anybody that's new to the tournament scene, that's a lot of good information in that right there. You can learn a lot about the tournament scene just listening to those tournament directors. So make sure you check him out on Fridays if you ain't already. Is there anything you want to add to this before we end it?
No, man, I appreciate you having me on, and like you said, I'd love to come on and talk about some of these other topics. Of course, if you guys want to follow me or get in touch with me, I'm really easy to find on social media. All you have to do is type in @Jonesing2Fish, not T-O, just the number 2, Jonesing2Fish on Facebook or Instagram. I'll pop up. You can also follow me and what I'm doing with Use Your Kayak Bassin. Again, that's on Facebook and Instagram. We're getting ready to launch that website. In fact, by the time this airs, that should be live. So yeah, if you guys have any questions or need anything, want to just talk about fishing, any of the things that we've covered tonight, I'd be happy to do that. So get a hold of me.
Yeah, sweet. And Sam, he posts a lot of good stuff on like Instagram and stuff like that. But if y'all want to follow any of us hosts here at Paddle and Fin, a lot of us, our Facebooks, you can see us on the Paddle and Fin Facebook page. You know, we we interact with people in the comment section quite a bit in there whenever people are commenting. And on Instagram, you can see us quite a bit on that. I believe we even have a post on there um, with all of us tagged. So, if people want to follow any of us hosts, we're all tagged in that post over there on Instagram. So you can follow us. And, a lot of us, I know me personally, when somebody follows me, if they got fishing related stuff in their pictures and stuff, I'll usually give them a follow back, because
Yep.
that's what I like to see. But yeah, everybody, it's the real Sam Jones right here. He finally got his moment of fame. He gives everybody else their moment of fame. It was his time, shine. But make sure you
Appreciate
follow
that.
him. Make sure you check him out on Fridays. And other than that, guys, tight lines and smooth paddling.
Later.
Go check out the website, guys. Paddle, the letter N and fin.com. Also, check out YouTube, youtube.com/paddle and fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest, feel free to email us at paddle, the letter N and fin @gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're doing giveaways, announcements, things like that at Facebook and Instagram at Paddle and Fin. Shout out to our show supporters, Rocktown Adventures, Loveland Canoe and Kayak, Hammered Lures, Fish Mob Lures, TRC Covers, Ketch Products. Go to ketchproducts.com. You could put the Paddle and Fin logo right on your catch board. Don't forget to go over and pick up your JigMasters Jigs. Use promo code PNF20 and save 20% today. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. It helps grow the audience, helps others find our podcast. So please drop a 5-star rating in on the podcast platform you're listening on. Don't forget about the recycled plastics program, you guys. Take your used plastic baits, put them in an envelope, mail them to the address in the show notes. Our man Eric Richards at Hammered Lures melts those down, makes new baits, and donates them to various chapters of Heroes on the Water.